Greetings to all the beautiful, curious human beings. My name is Lily, and I explore the shadow, the unconscious, social programming, but I explore it in the body as energetic information. And I'm sitting in the park, a local park, with all these beautiful trees, and I was watching these dogs playing. And they're so innocent dogs. They just follow their instincts. You know, they're sniffing buds and they're digging in the dirt and they're playing ball and they're just being their authentic, instinctual selves. And what came up was like how difficult it is for people, for humans, to follow their instincts. I'm not talking about the biological instincts, I'm talking about intuitive instincts. The inner wisdom that guides us in our lives. And like the internal guidance system, that's unique to everyone. There's no standard or one fits all kind of format. It's very unique to every individual person. What's right for them, what's not right for them. And this internal guidance system gets covered up with a lot of social conditioning and programming. And when I work with people, I really simplify this as like just starting with like the internal yes and no that you can feel in the body. And it can be challenging to follow that yes or no because there are social implications or social consequences or life consequences, circumstantial consequences that can happen. But also there's consequences when we don't follow our internal yeses and nos. There's consequences either way. No matter what you do, no matter what you choose, there's consequences, there's outcomes, there's echoes of your actions. And it's really good to explore this internally. Gives you a deeper connection with yourself. And it helps kind of rewind, or it helps us unlearn self-betrayal. And there's a lot of consequences to self-betrayal. Doing things that we don't want to do because we think we should do them. Or not doing things that we don't want to do. So the internal yeses and nos, we can feel those in our body. And a good little exercise is just starting with something simple. Like if somebody asks you to go do something, but you don't want to do it, and you say yes anyway. We can ask ourselves and feel into the body. There's a no here, and I'm saying yes. What am I afraid would happen if I don't say yes? What am I afraid would happen if I say no? If I don't do it? And what I came across was a lot of, well, there's emotional material like guilt and shame, fear, lots of fear around the social implications of that. But there was also a lot of like concepts and programming about what it means to be a good friend or a good daughter or a good employee. And for a lot of my life, I did things that I didn't want to do. Things at jobs, things my friends asked me to do, my parents asked me to do. And when that becomes a pattern of behavior of betraying yourself, it becomes very difficult to access your internal guidance system. And you might notice a lot of justification to do the thing you don't want to do. And noticing a lot of thoughts of why you should do it. A lot of negotiating or internal conflict about it. I should do this. I need to do this in order to get needs met, or in order to fulfill some obligation to another person. There's going to be a lot of mental activity. And it's a really good question to just kind of sit in the body, move attention inside of the body. Why am I doing this thing I don't want to do? And sometimes it's for survival. Sometimes we have to go to a job that we hate in order to provide for our families. And there can be a lot of fear and freeze and anxiety and depression about continuing to work at a job that you hate, or that is sucking the life out of you, or that is causing harm to other people. There's a lot of internal conflict about that. And this isn't necessarily about changing it. It's more about reconnecting to your internal guidance system and becoming clear about what is influencing you. What are the emotions? What are the beliefs? What are the concepts? What is the social programming that is influencing us to participate in these things that we actually don't want to, that drain us? impact our health and our sleep and our emotional state or physiology. And a lot of this is related to attachment, belonging, connection. And the social program of conformity, the need to conform to these social rules. And that really takes a toll on the body. It really takes a toll on the body. And I noticed this like years into release work, was that I could feel, it almost felt like a toxin in my system. It felt kind of like a poison to force the body to do these things that my inner wisdom was like, no, this isn't right for you. This person isn't right for you. This job isn't right for you. Doing this thing to overextend yourself isn't right for you. And I would push past it anyway. And it felt like a toxin, like a poison in my system. And over time, I became more and more sensitive to the way that it felt to betray myself. And for most of my life, the perception was the social consequences are more important, even though it wasn't really a conscious thing. I didn't know that's why I was doing things that I didn't want to do. But that was why. To fit in, to belong, to find acceptance, to be loved, to get these basic human needs met, to not be rejected, to not be criticized, to not be shamed, to not be judged. So I was avoiding all of these experiences and conforming to these social rules because of the consequences. But as I started more accurately, as the releasing of these repressed emotions and these programs started leaving my body, the consequences of self-betrayal became greater than the consequences of social acceptance. Because continuously putting yourself below the needs of others and not following your intuition about what's right for you, it really starts to affect the body. Like, there's like a compounding effect over time. And there was just like a lot of contraction and density and like nervous system activation, and it felt really bad in my system to do things that I didn't want to do. And here or there, I still do. But I notice it so clearly in my system, and it feels like poison. And when I do, there's a guilt. And early on, I learned this kind of trick, I guess, with communication and decision making about, if somebody asks me to do something and I don't know, I don't respond. I go inside, I feel into my body, and I ask myself, if there were no social consequences, would you want to do this? If you didn't have to feel guilt or shame or like a bad person, would you actually want to do this thing? And if the answer was no, then I would respond accordingly. And at first, I noticed there was like a making excuses of. But then it just became about transparent communication. Like, it doesn't feel right to commit to that. I'm wanting to take care of myself. And it became more about honoring myself rather than justifying the no. Because a lot of times we quote unquote make excuses, but really we're attempting to justify the no to other people in a way that they can accept. Things like, yeah, I'm really tired, or I'm really busy, or and there might even be some dishonesty involved, right? But we don't actually have to justify the no all the time. Of course, work settings are a little different, but in our personal lives, we don't really have to justify the no. There are these programs that say we do, and that we have to make other people be okay with our no. We have to say it in just the right way to avoid conflict or disruption in partnership or friendship, or the fear of making someone else unhappy, or the fear that they will get upset and angry with us and possibly lash out, right? So there's a lot of fear that goes into this, saying no and communicating our no without justifying it. But we don't actually have to. We don't have to justify it. We actually don't owe people that. And it's interesting that a lot of us, and not all of us, but a lot of us would rather be uncomfortable than make someone else uncomfortable. And by make, I say that loosely. We don't want to see the discomfort in others. We don't want to see them upset. We would rather feel that way. It's kind of like this self-sacrifice or martyrdom or something like that. And we're so used to it. It's so familiar, it's so comfortable. It's like, yeah, I'd rather feel uncomfortable and drained and overstretched than someone else not like my answer of no. And isn't that interesting? Why is that? And that's a good question. And although I'm talking about this intellectually, this is a really good exploration of the body, turning attention in, asking the question, listening to the feelings that arise in your body. Maybe there's a heaviness or a contraction, or maybe there's like a increased breathing or head pressure or some kind of physical pain. When you turn your attention inward and ask these questions, what am I afraid would happen if I say no? What are the consequences I'm perceiving will happen or thinking will happen? Why is it easier for me to betray myself? And sit in discomfort? Why is that easier than saying no and watching the discomfort of that no in another person? And why is their comfort more important than mine? Why is that? And a lot of this goes back to childhood and attachment with our parents. And even if there's not overt abuse when we say no, usually no's from children are not very welcome. And we learn to suppress our internal guidance system. We learn to suppress our no, to maintain attachment with our parents, to be seen as good and lovable and worthy, to avoid getting in trouble or feeling shame or guilt, to avoid feeling bad or unlovable. And then this is just reinforced in the education systems and in places of employment and in society when we're pressured to conform, to avoid social consequences. And for the human being, although, it might not seem like social consequences are drastic or like survival related, for the human being, for the parts of us that have been suppressed and are young and wounded, it is about survival. And that's why it can feel so difficult to say no and to not that it's easy to betray ourselves, but it becomes normal. It becomes like a tracked pattern. It becomes habit, and in that sense, it's just driving your behavior. You're not really in charge in those moments. There's other parts or emotions or programs that are actually determining for you, influencing your decision to say yes to things that you don't want to, or to say no when you want to say yes. Anyway, those are just some thoughts from my perspective. Something that came up while I was watching dogs be so true to themselves. And their floppy little ears when they run. So cute. I hope you all have a good day.